As always, please retry the question before watching the video. So for number 14, our punctuation is changing from answer to answer. So we are dealing with a clause question, and we want to consider the three things that could be wrong with a clause question. So what I want you to do is try to find the first verb. Pause the video, try to find the first verb in this sentence. All right, some of you probably chose detecting, but this is not a verb. It ends in ing, and therefore it is either a participle or a gerund and not a verb. Ing ending words look like verbs, but they require a helping verb to be a verb, okay? So our first actual verb in the sentence is have, okay? And therefore, in answer F, the first part of the sentence would just go to this first comma, and the second part of the sentence would start at that first comma and go to the period. And neither of those parts of the sentence have an independent clause, because the first one doesn't even have a verb, so it's not a clause at all. The second one, these have, is an independent clause, but it's separated by a comma fanboy, and therefore would need to have an independent clause before it. So answer F is wrong because the clauses are separated improperly. There's not an independent clause before the comma fanboy. Answer G, it turns the second clause into a dependent clause by putting that in front of the independent clause. It puts a dependent clause marker in front of the independent clause. Therefore, there is no independent clause on the first part of it. There is no independent clause after the dependent clause marker. And therefore, there is no independent clause in answer G, so we can eliminate it. All right, answer H also has a dependent clause marker in front of the independent clause, the only independent clause. So there is no independent clause in the sentence, which would also be the same for G. And therefore, we can eliminate H as well, leaving us with just J, which is indeed our correct answer. So let's just take a look at J here and why it's the correct answer. Okay, so try to determine what the subject is. The subject is almost always going to be every word before the verb. So find the verb again. What is our verb in the sentence? Our verb is have. Therefore, almost everything, all the words prior to have in this clause is going to be our subject. And I know it's hard for some of you to grasp that yet, but this is what the ACT does. They make the subjects as long as possible. So everything from complex to topography in answer J is the subject. Complex functions like detecting chemicals and mapping topography have. Okay, that entire thing is a subject-verb combo, and therefore now we just have one big independent clause. I'll just say it with answer J plugged in. Complex functions like detecting chemicals and mapping topography have already been implemented in robots with wide success. Perfectly done. There are no errors in it, and that is indeed our correct answer. If this makes sense to you, please add it to your worksheet. Write what you learned along with the answer on the explanation side, and then continue on to do the remaining Clause 2 questions that you missed on this test. If this is the final Clause 2 question that you missed on this test, please go ahead and do the Clause 2 mastery until you get 10 questions correct in a row before moving on to the next category.